You can be what you wanna be if you do what you gotta do. It all happens at Hilary's house, where all you gotta be is you. Hey everyone, and welcome to Hilary's House, episode 2. For episode 2, you get 2 people for the price of 1 because I am so privileged to have gotten to hang out with Mandi Sanders and Pinion, the Gemini twins from Starkville, Mississippi. I'm really excited about this particular conversation because these are 2 women for whom I have the utmost respect for so many reasons. 2 years ago, I was lying on my aunt's porch in Tampa, Florida, and the Scorpio full moon was in full effect. And while I was lying there, I just thought, I'm supposed to go to Mississippi. And I have family in Mississippi, so it wasn't the craziest idea that I've ever had by any stretch of the imagination. The next day, I called my aunt, and 2 weeks later, I was in Mississippi. When I went there, I had no idea what I was going to discover, but less than a week after I got there, I discovered the Soulflower Healing Arts Studio, and within a couple of weeks after that, I encountered Mandi and Allie. And their friendship has been extremely important to me, and just watching their work in the world is extremely inspiring to me. So I'm so excited to talk with them, but also to share with you everything that they are doing. One of the things that comes up in this conversation is that Allie is a bee guardian and a bee priestess. And as a result, she makes the most amazing beeswax candles. We did discuss how her apprentice, who is also Mandi's son, got a hold of a poop emoji mold and made these fine poop emoji candles. You'll notice from the background that I look like I am in Nuxabee Hills, which is in Ackerman, Mississippi. This was a trail that I spent a lot of time hiking, especially during Nature Church, which you are going to learn all about next week. I think it's completely appropriate that this particular episode is being released today, on May 1st, which is also Beltane. Beltane is the cross quarter day, or midpoint, between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. In the Celtic calendar, cross-quarter days are considered the first day of the season as opposed to the midpoint of the season. That means that in the Celtic calendar, the solstice or the equinox is considered the climax of the season as opposed to the beginning of the season. It also feels appropriate to release this on a day that's important in the Celtic calendar because healing the feminine in our Celtic ancestry is something that Mandi, Allie, and I all share. In addition, Allie talks quite a bit in this episode about her own personal devotion to Mother Mary. Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary, the mother of all creation. And today is also the first day of May, which is considered a day of devotion to Mary in the Catholic Church. Traditionally, the month of May is considered very powerful in terms of Marian devotion. One of the things that Allie discusses that feels especially resonant with my own personal experience is the power of Marian devotion. Allie discusses that on her own path of the priestess in the Rose lineage, she's engaging in practices and devotions to Mary that she shares with her grandmother, a conservative, devout Catholic. Through the process of writing a book about my own personal spiritual journey, I recently discovered that my progressive Northern all-girls school taught me a whole lot about theology and philosophy, which I'm really grateful for. But my conservative Southern Catholic school taught me about devotion. And in particular, devotion to the goddess and the anchoring, to use Mandi's term, of the divine feminine through prayer services where we made offerings of food, water, and flowers. And that feels really important for my own story and also for the context of this particular conversation. This conversation is really rich and really deep because it took place mostly in Mississippi, 2 against 1. And Mississippi is an incredibly deep, rich, muddy, oppressive, powerful, healing kind of place. And so no other kind of conversation can really emerge from that type of environment. Mississippi is the mud, and the Mississippi Delta is the womb of the United States of America, the birthplace of what we now call our country. I think that's one of the reasons why the healing work that's being done there feels so deep and so profound. And so on this first day of May, on this Beltane, on this day when we celebrate Mother Mary, the goddess, I want to make this offering to you, the listener, to Mother Mary, mother of all creation, to my mother, to Mandi and Allie, and to Mississippi. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. And when the night is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me, shine on until tomorrow, let it be. I wake up to the sound of music, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Thank you for coming to Hilary's house. Have a great day.
Hi, Mandi and Allie.
Hello.
How are you guys?
We are doing well. Very well, thanks. How are you?
Awesome. I'm fantastic. Where are you guys right now?
The lovely town of Starkville, Mississippi.
Oh, Starkville.
Well, it's interesting right now.
What's happening right now? What's happening in Starkville?
Well, we just got an ordinance put in yesterday that you have to wear masks everywhere now, and like businesses can refuse service to you if you don't have a mask. Let me know if you can hear my cat. She like always wants to be in the place where things are happening. So
That's fine. I can't hear her, but she's also more than welcome to join.
She'll like be all
the creatures are welcome.
But yeah, our first farmers market opened up this past weekend, and I talked to some of the farmers, and they did pretty well. It's just interesting times. I really enjoy seeing people's like creative ways of like taking care of themselves and their businesses, and like people reaching out to do things. Some people in our community have started like a group on Facebook, and they're asking people to post like what businesses they supported that day to kind of get other people to, support those businesses
Positive
as well.
pressure.
I think that it's kind of, getting people to open up their creative side a little bit more and their problem solving.
Can you talk a little bit about your own businesses generally, and also how they have been affected during this time?
So I'm an herbalist, and I actually had quite an onslaught of business at the beginning of this, to the extent where I actually needed to kind of pull in my own life and just actually close my shop, catch up, and actually keep it closed. So I have shifted my efforts right now, and I'm keeping my retail stockists well stocked, and my two main ones are shipping out orders and doing local pickup, but they're both amazing women whose storefronts have had to close and are, really feeling a pinch from that. So I've shifted my online stuff just actually to just directing business towards my stockist, because there was quite a bit of folks wanting some good herbs, which I'm grateful for. The main thing that I am feeling is that a lot of our classes that we teach, and this is like prime time, we've had several herbal conferences and retreats and different workshops and things like that, where we were either leading ceremonies or teaching classes or vending that had to be canceled. And so there was a lot of income loss there, but mostly I am missing the connection that comes about whenever, we're able to lead a ceremony or a class.
Okay.
And I do a lot of work with plant spirit medicine, so that's the focus of a lot of the ceremonial work. And then herbalism classes, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of good stuff. It's mostly about connecting people with their heart and with the land.
And when you say plant spirit medicine, how would you describe that to somebody who has never heard that term before?
And I actually began my path with plants through learning, this plant was good for this thing, whether it was nutritionally or medicinally. But as I grew over, 10, 15 years in working with plants, I started hearing these whisperings and, had this connection that was a spiritual connection to the plants. And so as I'm sitting or tending to the plants in my garden or in the forest harvesting, I'm getting these downloads essentially. And what I realized was also through learning to trust my intuition and trust what I was receiving, that I was communicating with plants. And I love bridging this world that we live in, this modern world where we have all this research and science, with the ancient. And that is true for many aspects, most aspects of my life. Recently, I would say maybe in the past 5 or 6 years, especially, there's been all this cool information from scientists who've had similar experiences that are actually studying this and putting out this really cool data of plant communication. So plant spirit medicine is this relationship of communicating with plants, heart to heart, mind to mind, spiritually, energetically, and working with the plants in that respect.
We've also done some classes together and ceremonies together with like stone spirit medicine. So basically the same thing that she was saying with the plants, but working with stones, gemstones, minerals, rocks, in that way as well.
And do you want to talk, Allie, a little bit about your business? Your business?
Yeah. There we go.
Good.
Yeah, in the beginning of this virus coming out, I did sell a lot of propolis, which is basically the medicine that bees make for their immune system. So they gather resins from different trees, they mix it with their gut flora and honey and pollen, and then they kind of spread it all around the inside of their hive. One bee can't live on its own. They're actually a superorganism. So the body of the bee is actually the comb, and their blood is actually the honey. And so when they have that propolis, that's their immune system. And so I basically take that propolis and I tincture it in alcohol and extract it. It can also be extracted in glycerin and water and witch hazel too. So I offer a couple of different ways of working with it. so that really took off those sales with that. But it's swarm season right now, and that means that, like I said, bees are a superorganism. Even though baby bees are born, 6 to 8 months out of the year, actual whole colonies are only born in this mid to late March through end of June. And well, they can all actually go all the way through September, but like the main prime swarm season is right now. And so like I realized one day that like I'm a bee midwife. I am on call to the bee, and I am there at the birthing of a new colony. And like swarm season fills my heart more than anything else. Like it is the most beautiful thing that you could possibly experience. And a lot of people who call me have no experience whatsoever with bees. All that they know is, oh my gosh, bees sting. I have anxiety and fear. And then they see me come up without any like protective gear and just like put my hands in a swarm, and they're like, whoa, 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 what, tell me about this. And so like I love talking about bees, so I get to like explain to them everything about what's happening. And then they are, instead of 20 feet back, now they're kind of getting a little closer, and they're asking more questions. And they're like, well, I was actually going to spray that, but somebody told me to call you. And so I'm really glad that I did. And so like this is my most favorite time of the year. Like Mandi said, we had several conferences that we were going to be teaching and vending at, and I'm really sad about that. But I also don't really like to leave town during this time of year as well because of swarm season.
Do you recommend for people who are not in your area, if they see a swarm, what should they do?
So if you see a swarm of bees, and let me explain what a swarm of bees is first.
Please do.
So a swarm of bees is when, it can be different things, but most of the time it's when the older queen leaves with about a third of the hive. So a new queen is being born and stays in the hive, and she's with all the rest of the bees. Well, they take off and they land in a little spot, in a little cluster, they actually most of the time are in the shape of a heart, and it's quite beautiful. And it's like, it looks almost like a beating heart because you can just see their wings and everything just flowing all together. And they are on this little spot for anywhere from an hour to 3 days. And they're actually democratically voting where they want to go, where they want to fly off to. And I think that's so cool. Like we can learn so much just about bees and about, how to be good social creatures that are in the oneness of everything, connected to everything. Then they will fly off, and it's like organized chaos. They are just flying all over the place, and you can like stand in the center and they won't even hit you. Like every time I see a swarm, I go and walk in the middle of it, because it is like you are in this like cosmic in-between world space. So many different cultures actually worked with the bees to travel between the worlds, because like I said, the bees are one body, but they can disassociate from that body, move somewhere else, and come back together. So what to do when you see this swarm of bees? It might look like a bee tornado. You might see all these little specks of golden sun just kind of going in this like, looks like chaos. And then they will collect in one spot. And it can take, 20 minutes to an hour for them to all just kind of gather in this one spot. And you don't want to disturb them really, because you want somebody to be able to come and get them, because only about 30% of swarms make it if they don't get a home in an urban area. Now in the forest, let them be, let them go find a hole in a tree. But if you're in an urban area, they're not always going to make it, especially if a storm's about to come. They're not going to sting you. Their bellies are full of honey, because what they've done is they've gorged on honey in the hive, so that when they have food with them to burn in their flight, but also when they find a new place to live, bees actually shed, they have these little glands that they shed wax from out of their abdomen. So then they're ready to build their new bones, their new body. So if you see a swarm, you need to, if you don't know a beekeeper, look up your local beekeeping association and call someone from that, and then they can find you a beekeeper. and, don't spray them. Just give them their space. They may move on very quickly. This is also a time that if you have some holes in the eaves of your home, to plug them up, because bees will, I've gotten a couple of calls where they've tried to move into the house.
There's so much that I love about both of you. And one of them is that you're always learning, and you already have an endless amount of knowledge, but you also are constantly seeking knowledge. What are you learning about right now? You can interpret that in any kind of way that's really exciting you right now.
We're both also in this 40-day practice together, and this winter I have just been diving in my spiritual path to studying the Aramaic, the original Aramaic, the Bible, and sort of reclaiming a path of Christianity, the mystic path, the original path, I would say, of what has been sort of transformed into not a negative thing really, but possibly it could be seen that way. So I've been really enjoying, studying this beautiful language, and it's so poetic and amazing. So I've just been diving in with that. And that is really where the 8 books on my bedside table, it's various things in that realm.
That's fantastic. Are there mystics in particular that you feel drawn to?
But really right now I'm literally looking at Aramaic, old ancient Aramaic texts, and a lot of scholars that have been either studying religion or studying language, and then somehow, came across these texts and realized that so much was lost when basically men started altering the translations to shape church and church as government, and sort of reclaiming that.
So what I've been diving into a lot lately is dream work, and I've been on that path for many, many years, but I'm in a program right now where we are learning from the path of pollen, and in particular dream work along with bees. And I'm doing my own work in dream healing temples and sleep healing through dreaming and sleep, and in journey work, but mostly working with the bees and the oneness of myself and everything else, as the bee is one with everything and everything around it, and being in connection to that. Also finding my dream oracle self, finding how finding how that works within me, and how to heal myself, and the work that I'm doing in the conscious world, and how that reflects in the unconscious world. I'm in a couple of different dream circles, but this is just really in the forefront for me right now. I've also been digging a lot into the Fae, and I believe that I have some ancestry in the Fae, and they come a lot to me in dreams and tell me a lot of things. So I feel like dream work is my most potent, dreaming particularly with the bees. I mean, my business name is Dreaming the Bee. And, it's every time that I've caught a swarm this year, or, not been caught a swarm, but been in the presence of one, I've dreamt it the day before. And, before I had an argument with my beloved, I dreamt about it the night before, And so, learning what is symbology for me in dreams, but also how to interpret that, so I can reflect upon it beforehand and let it be a guide, rather than reflect upon it after, oh well, I dreamt about that, I should have known that, sort of.
I've been doing a lot of dream work lately as well. Well, I've gotten so excited about astroherbalism and medical astrology, but also how that relates to the plants that are in my environment currently, which are completely foreign to me. But I had this huge revelation breakthrough like 4 days ago that part of the reason why I'm here in this environment is because of these plants and because of things that I need to be learning from these plants, and simply allowing them to work on me in different kinds of ways. So
I believe firmly that the plants will pull you to a place, and that also when a place pulls you to a place, when the land pulls you to it, you know, plants will start appearing within a year or so of developing a relationship with a place. Plants that weren't there necessarily before begin emerging, and not just plants, you know, mushroom medicine, all the land beings will just begin appearing.
yep, and they have been. It's been almost a year, so yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, so that's what's happening, and it's funny because I went to this like an herbal meetup group. I was actually leaving there, and somebody was asking, "Why did you come here?" And I didn't. It just came out of my mouth. Oh, I came here because of the plants here, which was never something that I had thought. And it just came out. And then last week I was like, oh, I knew it over here, even though I didn't know it here, right? That they were pulling me. So it's very interesting.
Have you asked like particular plants to dream with you?
I have not, and I should definitely do that. Thank you.
One of the practices I've been doing lately is I go into like a meditation with the particular plant or stone or whatever and ask them how will they show up to me in a dream, because they don't always show up as like, oh, I'm Yarrow in the dream.
Right.
You know? They can
Right.
show up as, some like a color or a pool of water, or like stepping into that space and asking them how they might show up as Yarrow, but how else do you show up? How do I know you're with me, sort of thing.
That is a fantastic idea. Thank you for that. Do you guys want to talk about the red tent?
Oh, yeah. Red tents, or sometimes they're called moon lodges. The resurgence in this idea of red tents kind of began, I would say, maybe a decade or so ago. But red tents originally are going back to our ancestors and the lineage of this sacred space for women to gather. And often it was the place that women would go when they were bleeding. But it was not just for bleeding women. It was for women of all ages and generations, and a place to share wisdom, a place to hold space for each other, a place to just nurture each other and to pass on stories. And also, it was the women's temple. It was the place within the community, within the tribe, where the women gathered to dream together, to be together, to make decisions, and be in this space where they could really work their feminine magic. So there has been, a stripping away of this community of women, a stripping away of this power of women, a stripping away of the mistrust of our intuition, and, this branding of being witches. And, we could go throughout history, and, even bleeding is still taboo in so many parts of the world. So there's been a resurgence. There was a novel, I believe, the late mid 90s by Anita Diamond. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's called The Red Tent, but she actually writes from a story in the Bible, which I love, because she writes from the perspective of the women whose stories were not included in the modern translations. And so she, takes this story of these women and tells it, and they have their red tent space. So it's where the women were giving birth. It's where they are bleeding. It's just this beautiful space. And so now there's just been this movement of reclamation around this space for women. And we were able, when the Healing Art Studio where we all met, Soulflower here in Starkville, opened, we were able to bring the red tents into a community public space. And we actually used it as a space for women to gather and share stories, but we also facilitated wisdom sharing. And, there would be things that were going on in our lives, or like bits of information that we just really wanted to share, lost bits of wisdom, women's wisdom that we wanted to share. So we worked with it in the space of this wisdom sharing.
And we brought ceremony to
Mhm.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And why do you think that is important generally? And do you think that there's a specific importance given your location?
One of the reasons why I feel like it's very important is because there's a lot of shame around our sexuality, and I don't just mean sex, I mean like our bodies in general, and we don't really know what normal is. And to be in a space of women and to just have that place to be able to talk about like what you're going through, what is happening with your body. Like one time we had like Sexy Plants and Stones red tent, and we talked about different things about plants and stones, but then in the end we always open up for dialogue. And the most you could tell, like, people were getting a lot from what we were offering, but we all got a lot from people's sharing. And I think that that's it. Like, we don't have these like platforms that is sacred space that is held for us that we feel safe enough to speak things about. Like, we have the internet and all these different things where we can say whatever we want on there, but we don't have a place where we can really open our hearts and reflect and have stories back and forth. And I think that that is one of the main things that Red Tent is about story sharing. And I know that, like, I didn't get to talk to my mom much about like going through menopause or her mother. And, that is something that, we should all know and should all be prepared for. And I think that is one of the things about Red Tent and like Menarche. I think that young women should be able to talk to other women and, learn those sort of things, and like just sex at different ages. I know that I've changed so much what my sexual needs are from when I was 20 and to my, mid 30s. And so like, I think that when we are able to have these spaces, we release a lot of sexual shame that we sometimes did not even know that we were carrying ourselves.
Yeah. The two of you create a space that is shameless. I've sat in a lot of women's circles, and I can honestly say that I would feel more comfortable talking about more things sitting in your circles, in your Red Tent, than probably any other women's circle where I've ever been. You just, the two of you hold that sense of your own power so gracefully and with such integrity that anyone else who's in your presence has to do the same, in my personal experience. And I'm very grateful for what you provide, and certainly what you've given to me and what you continue to give to me and what you provide to people in your community and everyone who's connected to you. You're truly people who your presence is healing in and of itself. You also just happen to be incredibly knowledgeable about all of these other things, but it starts there, and that's extremely powerful.
Thank you, Hilary.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
That means a lot.
And it's actually like at the foundation of it all, that's what's so important to us, that whether it's ceremony or Red Tent or a class on, herbalism or Bee Guardianship 101, we want the space, we want everyone met right where they are and held in a space that feels safe and loving and open. And, you asked, why it's important for what we're doing here. And being in Mississippi, often we get comments from people who are in Mississippi or are not from Mississippi, and they're like, what? Y'all are doing that in Mississippi? Like, we didn't ever think we would find something like that here. Or they're just very surprised. And, Mississippi is like, ooh, it's heavy, and there is a lot of oppressive energy here, and a lot
The
of
mud is real.
Yeah, the mud is thick here. But it's also because this place is very powerful. And it's in a state of reclaiming that. But to do that, there's a lot that has to be healed. So I think at the root of everything, our own selves are doing a lot of healing, but really feel called to hold space for others as well. That soul midwifery.
Well, you're also very much involved with the physical births as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
In my mid-20s, giving birth to my first child, I actually found out that my great-great-grandmother in Germany was a midwife, and the women before her. And she actually got put in jail for sneaking out on her bike to go attend a birth when midwifery had been outlawed. So, totally my ancestor.
Totally see her doing that.
The blood runs thick.
Yeah.
But through giving birth to my first child at home and with midwives, I just had so much awaken in me. And I knew that it was the beginning of my space holding for women was to train as a birth doula, a postpartum doula. And also, I am actually still a Leche League leader, so holding space for women postpartum as they learn to nurture their baby from their breasts. And I attended a birth of two friends, two amazing women a couple years ago, and that was probably maybe the last birth. I don't know. So, yeah. I feel very passionate about women reclaiming their voice and bodies in birth and the wisdom in birth. And I love to hold space for that and advocate very strongly for women to have space.
Can you talk a little bit about the La Leche League?
Yeah, the Leche League is a global organization that basically supports breastfeeding. And, I found La Leche League as a first-time mother. And I would have to say, learning to breastfeed when you're in a culture in which women's breasts, not men's, are still, there's a lot of shame around it and we can't show our nipples. And there's just a lot of cultural narrative around breasts that are not necessarily healthy and empowered. I had been breastfed, which was actually something that most people of my generation aren't able to say. And my mom had some wisdom for me, but also I didn't remember really seeing anybody breastfeed. And I was not about to hide away at home and breastfeed just to be able to breastfeed, So finding the Leche League gave me community, gave me a circle of women that could commiserate, being awake all night with a baby, or, help me know what was normal and what was not, and just be there for support. It was like my breastfeeding red tent.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like red tent, but
yeah. But that's goes back to what
that's what
red tent is.
Yeah.
So it was my first step on that path.
That's interesting. I meant to say earlier, I don't know if I told you guys this actually. Right before I moved here to San Diego, I saw Anita Diamant speak. It was actually at a synagogue, so it was very much focused on, the biblical, the Hebrew culture component. But she talked about how, it was a fictional piece. And now all of a sudden, all of these women are running around thinking that the history, the red tent is actual history, and they're creating all of these things, and it's so ridiculous, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah. And I actually, it was a Hillary moment, right? I went up afterwards and talked to her and said, there's a lot of different texts that say a lot of different things, but whether the history is there or not, the fact is that you wrote a story that's empowering women to reclaim themselves and their bodies, and that's never ridiculous.
Good for you.
Yes.
And I could also appreciate her intellect. I mean, I know you guys can appreciate too, she's coming from this intellectual background, well, we have to be, historically accurate, but it's not that it's not historically accurate either. So it was just a really interesting, it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, I think that people, they channel things sometimes, and some people are aware of that, and some people aren't.
Well, we're thankful for her for being the channel to bring this story.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. Would you guys like to talk also a little bit about your work with Mary Magdalene and reclaiming your spiritual and ancestral paths and allowing all of the religions and spiritual systems of your ancestors to find places within you that feel authentic to you?
Like, we aren't joking about the Gemini twin stuff. We have so many things.
I'm not joking about that. When I said, I mean, you guys are the embodiment of the Gemini twins.
Our birthdays
inherently
are, we're like silly. The synchronicities are silly at this point. But we both lost our maternal grandmothers this year. Not speaking for both of us, but also know that both of us have had things within our divine feminine really align and anchor in through ancestral healing work and through their passing. And it's been a really beautiful process and a really powerful process, and a reminder that there are things so much, bigger than us and beyond words in our opposite dynamics of the Gemini twins. I grew up, Baptist in Mississippi in the South, with all the stereotypes that go along with that. Allie's Catholic and grew up Catholic, but we have learned as we walk, this path of the priestess together and reclaiming what that means, and also embodying what that means in a new and healed way. We have learned the similarities and differences are just perspective. I'm currently in this 40-day practice of anchoring this divine masculine, which I'm still really resistant to, because I've been walking this path of the divine feminine for so long, with my own Mary Magdalene experience at the age of 16. And now here I am, 22 years later, and just can see all these steps along my path that these women, specifically for me within my ancestral lineage of Christianity, these divine feminine goddesses of this lineage in particular are just powerful, amazing women who have just endured so much. And, the time for the reclamation of their stories is now. And I know that's one thing that's just really, really been anchoring in with my grandmother's passing, just the awe of it all. Speaking of Mary Magdalene, I just went down a wormhole in college, reading and studying and trying to just find everything I could about her. And 2 decades ago, that was a lot harder than it is now. But there is an amazing book called Mary Magdalene Revealed that came out this past summer that is just so beautiful and potent. So if anybody listening is really intrigued by what we're talking about, that is my go-to Mary Magdalene resource. And I wish I would have had this book in my hands when I was 16 years old.
My grandmother passed away right around Samhain, and her grandmother passed away right around Imbolc. My grandmother's name was Mary, and her whole life was in devotion to Mother Mary. There are Mother Marys all over her house. I would call her sometimes during the week, and she was, I just got back from the church, praying my novenas to Mary, and it was always Mary. And I told her about this priestess path that I was on, and the Rose lineage and what it meant, and about Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, and some of the practices that we were doing. And she would tell me about how they do the same thing in the Catholic Church. And Mandi and I and a friend of ours, Lydia, went to one of Daniel Four's ancestral healing intensives. Ooh, and was it intense?
It was aptly named.
Woo!
No retreat.
I feel like
nothing.
you did like 4 years worth of work in 4 days. Like,
Yeah.
ooh. But I told my grandmother about it, and she was like, "Oh, well, this is how we do that in the Catholic Church." And honestly, I had a lot. I went to therapy basically for being growing up in the Catholic Church as a child, and like all the shame and guilt and all that that's instilled in you. And my mother actually taught Sunday school and got kicked out of teaching Sunday school because she taught our Sunday school group that Mary Magdalene was Jesus's wife and lover and was a priestess, so like I know that this is in my lineage, and I didn't appreciate it then. Now I had to like go through the whole stages of basically being an atheist and then agnostic and then come to like animist and go through like all these different stages to really come back to like, oh, I live in Christ consciousness. I understand that all this is about love, and many of the things that were written by man were changed, and this is all about love, and that's all that it ever was about. But I remember growing up, I was so glad that my name was not Mary, and because my mom's name was Mary and my grandmother's name was Mary, but I didn't get the Mary. I got the Catherine, but not the Mary Catherine. And recently, in my working with my 40-day practice, I heard, "You are Mary, and you need to embrace the name Mary." And I just like cried. Before my grandmother passed away, I was talking to her about Mary, and she said, "Well, my mother, which would be my great grandmother, she prayed to, they call her the Virgin Mary. She prayed to the Virgin Mary for 3 or 4 years every day that if she could have a daughter, she would dress her all in blue and white for 5 years and name her Mary." After she told me that, I went through a period where I wore blue every day just to really get connected. And now I feel so strongly like Mary is with me. Like we are sisters. She is in my heart. And I am working with her all day, every day. And I work with Mary Magdalene deeply as well. But like Mother Mary, she's my lineage, and she's my woman. One of my, well, actually, I'm going to have to plug 2 books here because right before my grandmother passed away, because I actually did get to talk to her about this book, was called The Way of the Rose by Clark Strand and Perdita Finn. And it's about the rosary. And interestingly enough, even in my period of being an atheist, I have always said the rosary. I have always come to that like meditative prayer. And through this book, I learned that Mother Mary, well, I guess I always knew this, but it really spelled it out. Like she is the embodiment of the earth. Like she is the Black Madonna. She is the fertile soil. She is Mama Gaia, Pachamama. I mean, and she shows up in all these different ways and shapes and forms, and Our Lady of Guadalupe. And the rosary was actually started as gifts to the goddess, spreading prayers into flowers, and that was the prayers to the goddess and left as offerings. And that's something that Mandi and I plan to offer with our community. We really get good responses when we do prayers with people. I think people are a little bit put off by the word prayer. I mean, I definitely was. I had to kind of relearn how to pray again. And then the other book I want to plug is The Black Madonna by Alessandra Belloni. She's Sicilian, and I'm Sicilian as well. And that was kind of brings more of the like African, like Yamaya, Oshun, and the Madonna as being like the dark goddess, the fertile soil.
One of the things that I was really interested in talking to you ladies about, I've known for my whole life that community health is a really, really important piece of what I'm here to do, what I'm here to help facilitate, because it's something that I've been interested in for my whole life. And when I say community health, it's not just the health of individual bodies, but also the relationship between people's physical, emotional, spiritual health and the health of people's relationships with one another. Both of you very much take your work in health and with health for the community seriously. I don't think I've ever met anybody else who introduces themselves as a community herbalist.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do the two of you envision what community health can be, or how you would like for it to be in a structure that is sustainable and sustainable for the people doing the care, as well as sustainable for the planet and facilitating more relationship with the planet and with one another?
To me, health is not separate from physical and spiritual and mental and emotional. And, when we categorize things and focus just on one aspect, we're never going to be fully healed. When I was in college, I was studying psychology, and at first I wanted to do music therapy. And then I very quickly realized how much nutrition affects mental and emotional health. That just kind of spiraled me on to this journey that I'm on. So there's all these layers of healing, and we can address what we can address as we're able to address it. But once we work through one thing, there's always going to be one more thing revealed. And throughout my own personal health journey, I did all the things. And what's interesting is I had been doing all the food things over a decade. I had been working with herbal medicine as the only medicine in my body well over a decade. I've been doing all the little things when someone first gets sick, check those off. My home environment was clean. I was a kids yoga teacher. I'm teaching like nature kids courses. Like those things were boxes checked and had been. So what I realized was my health was revealing something deeper to me. And it was not until I addressed the spiritual aspects and the deeper emotional body aspects that I was able to start feeling better. And, there's still things that I'm being shown and working on and reclaiming bits of myself. So when I think of community health, yes, I'm looking at an individual who's coming to me, but when I am working one-on-one with someone, I'm addressing a lot of things. I'm giving grounding practices or stones and herbs and food suggestions and, lifestyle considerations. But within that person, there's the dynamic of the people around them and the people around them. There's this web, and we're not separate. So community health is the individual, but the individual within the collective. Our communities are going under a huge, huge transformation. And, it's not a surprise to me. I feel very grateful that I have a lot of tools that are keeping me pretty well grounded through all of this, and a lifestyle that does not change very much. I am very blessed and aware that I have been given that as a gift. But it allows me to continue my work and build this foundation where at the center of healing is this reconnection back to ourselves and our highest selves and our souls and our spiritual selves, whatever words you want to use, because that is truly the way that we can realize, the healing that is being reflected with us as individuals is what's also being asked for and needed within the collective.
I actually went to graduate school in health promotion while I was farming. So I was a regenerative farmer. I raised meat chickens, force-fed pigs, moved every day to fresh pastures, worked my butt off to provide my community with good food.
Amazing food.
And, also acknowledging that I was coming from a place of privilege as well. Not everyone, even if they have access to that kind of food, has the money to get that sort of food. But I quickly realized that our state of Mississippi did not really have the best interests of health at heart. And you can even see that in our farmers markets. The ones in Mississippi that are doing well are the people who are grassroots and really working hard to teach people what to do with these different foods. So I think community health involves knowledge of how to actually prepare your food. I think that it involves the health of your landscape. So one of my friends lives in New Orleans and she wants a garden, but she had to bring all the soil in because there's so much toxicity in the soil. So like that's another place of privilege that I'm coming from when I live in a rural area in Starkville, and I feel safe to plant things in the ground. I also feel like it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no toxins in the soil. It also means that people are, like Mandi said, grounded and connected and in a relationship of gratitude and acknowledgement of the plants and the soil and the things that are living there, and acknowledging that we have lawns that we can grow food on. And I think people are starting to realize now that there are some shortages of different foods that it's really important to learn and have the skills of your own foods. I particularly studied community health and sex education, and I am a big believer that if we still hold on to a lot of sexual shame, which our culture instills in us, then we're not fully connected to our bodies, and then we really can't ground. We really can't be in a place of center if we feel like parts of our body are gross or, sinful. And I'm using that word, I guess, because I grew up Catholic. So like I went on this whole mission of like, I'm going to help women in particular release sexual shame so that they can, feel safer in our bodies, because a lot of times we have issues that show up in our menstrual cycle that are happening because, we are just like so disconnected, like that energy is not flowing there. So I actually am a vaginal steam practitioner as well. So I do yoni steams for people and prepare specific herbs for specific things that they might need. So I feel like Mandi said, so many different levels of health that comes into that. That's also one of the reasons why I became a beekeeper, is like we were kind of like in the stages of losing the farm. Our state basically made it to where we couldn't sell anymore. And I was having all this anxiety, and I felt really ungrounded. I felt like I had no root, like literally the ground had dropped out from under me. And I started reading about like bees and how they, like the zen of bees. And so like that's one of the things that I am working on outreach to my community, is in particular kids, is to get them connected to nature and to bees in particular, and understand the oneness that we are all one, and we all must take care of ourselves and meet one another with love in order to have a healthy community and healthy space.
And you have an apprentice.
I do. Mandi's son, who is 10, Charlie, and a new apprentice got her bee suit when she turned 5.
Oh, man.
I have 2 apprentices.
That's
I
awesome.
also mentor a couple of women, and I'm about to launch my bee sponsorships. So people
That's amazing.
have place for a beehive, they can sponsor me to take care of the bees for them, and they can come and visit them if they want to, or not.
That's fantastic. And
Yeah.
you also have these candles that are amazing. Unfortunately, the poo emoji candles did not arrive yet.
They're on the way.
I know they are. I will certainly be posting pictures of those during my release ceremony.
Yeah, right.
But for other ceremonies, Allie does create beautiful ceremonies.
Amazing
ceremonial candles where I actually like read about monks, like Catholic monks were dipping candles with prayer, and I was like, oh my gosh, that I love it. And so I started doing that as well, and it is just an amazing practice. But yeah, my apprentice Charlie, I gave him some wax one day, and his mom was actually about to throw away the poop emoji mold, and I was like, oh, don't throw that away, they'll be so upset. And then the next couple of days later, Charlie sends me a picture of his little poop emoji candles, and now they're like selling like crazy. I'm like, yeah. So he teaches us so much, especially about gritting, crystal gritting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's awesome. In what ways?
Oh, he makes like these incredible, like one day we came up and he had figured out time travel through this crystal grid that he made.
That makes sense.
I mean, kids.
But he also has that kind of mind.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, kids are just still so connected and fresh, and our society treats them as if they're not, and they're just these wise little beings in small bodies. They definitely teach me a lot.
I mean, he was teaching us how to ground with the flame of a candle and release energy and let the candle burn the things that weren't serving you off.
Yeah.
Like this kid,
That's amazing.
he's got it.
What do you see about the future that excites you? Or what are you envisioning?
You know, I received a really beautiful vision. That is what kept me in Mississippi a couple of years ago. And I think what this time is teaching is what a lot of us have been learning over the past 5 to 7 years, especially. But now it's being brought to everyone in really strong ways. You know, this medicine of slowing down, of centering, of realizing that a lot of, systems that are in place are not working, and that everyone is really tired and stressed and feels like crap. And, you can't really feel your feels. You can't really connect to your body if you don't slow down long enough. So this medicine of slowing down and focusing in on home and what really matters is what is going to allow people to bring in their own unique medicine. And it's what it's going to allow for so much healing to take place. And, I see almost every day something cool environmentally that's been allowed to heal in the past few months, and Mother Earth, she knows what she needs to do to heal, and she'll do it easy way, hard way, or in between. So honestly, my nickname in high school was Sunshine, and I still have friends that call me that. And so I am not just the perpetual optimist, but I am. And I really feel like we're at a point where, it's a point of like put up or shut up, and like, it's time. Mm-hmm. And there is hard work ahead, and I am not going to deny that dark nights of the soul are in full blast right now. And that is hard, deep, dark shadow work. But at the same time, I feel we are being presented with this really beautiful opportunity to integrate, to heal from a lot of things and integrate a new way forward. And that is my prayer, that everyone realizes this connectedness. And we see a lot of polarity and duality right now, but the medicine to bridge that is also here. Very strong.
Medicine always grows with the poison, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, just to be a little bit different of a spectrum, I really think that having access to so much information for people at a young age is really what's going to help change this world. Because, for example, her son, who is 12 now, I mean, just knows way more than I know, and my husband too. And he can take apart computers and put them back together. Like, he just went and took a ham radio test, which I don't even know anything about that. And I think that having so much a place for kids to be able to learn whatever they want to learn. I didn't have that when I was a child. I had to kind of go to college and take a bunch of classes and figure out what I wanted. But, you can learn how to make a solar panel on YouTube, and her son is smart enough to do something like that. And I think that is also going to be a big contributing factor to people being able to go back to the land, because they are able to access the knowledge on how to build whatever they want to build and do whatever they want to do through YouTube University, So that's kind of a different perspective, but I see the internet as being a bad thing, also a good thing in that way. Not to even mention the whole back to the land movement of people wanting gardens and all this research. People have to have the research to if I go and breathe in a forest, that's better than taking an antidepressant. With people having access to that information now, microdosing mushrooms with Michael Pollan, if he hadn't come out with that book and people hadn't had that knowledge, it would still be oh my gosh, this old hippie taking mushrooms, and not actually helping people with post-traumatic stress disorder, So I think that information is also, it's negative, but it's also really positive, and it's going to help us form the future that is positive future.
And the North Node is moving into Gemini next week. So there'll be lots of exciting Gemini energy. actually think this is
Whoa.
really exciting because as things are kind of transforming in this moment and a lot of things are starting to collapse, to me it will be a time for a lot of sharing of information, more community building, more local community development, cross-pollination of systems and perspectives and backgrounds so that we can start to build these things and create new structures that are more sustainable than the ones that we currently have. That's the vision I'm putting out there for that particular transit.
I like that.
Is there anything that you guys feel like you really want people to know right now?
Since my grandmother's passing in early February, it's been hard for me to even be engaging in the world of social media, but I also can't live in a bubble. And, there's the business side. So I'm on a little bit. And so when I see this divisive polarity and all the things just swirling, and as one of my teachers said, we're at this crossroad of all these timelines that could present and merge. And to me, what has been really, really important in my own life in navigating all of this is, whatever it is that's coming up and, bringing up emotions in me, anger or fear or anxiety or, whatever it is, my practice has been just focusing on that. And, maybe it's a particular person in government or a particular theory of what's going on right now, and it's causing like anger or fear or anxiety in my body. I pray for that. And I don't pray for, as an example, a political figure. I don't pray for that political figure in the sense of, I'm praying for him and or her, and I want them healed, and I want them to find a better way or to see the error of their path. What I pray for is that I see the connection and divine in them, and that the same thing, if there's a particular theory, that I pray and trust in the divine that is active within that, because within all of it there is divine unfolding.
Yeah.
And to me it's been a prayer of trust and a vision and of connection to that person or theory or thing, and allowing my heart to just sink in. And I think that's really important right now because everybody's just really, really heated and opinionated as typical, but it's just really strong right now. So that particular practice has been really keeping me where I can be grounded and where I can observe what's coming up in me, but then also kind of, come to a place of healing and transformation.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
If I had anything to tell people, I would say to find something that can ground you, something that you can work with your hands, whether it's drawing or weaving or carving or digging in the dirt, but do something that puts you in relationship, that gets you being creative. Even if you don't feel like you're creative, you are, and creativity is running through you. And dance. Part of my 40-day practice has been to dance, and I am literally feeling things like activating within me. And don't care what you look like when you're dancing. That is so important. Drop that and just dance. Mandi sent me this like man dancing, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's it. Like that is how you like step into yourself. You're fully present, you're fully embodied, and just dance.
Dance is where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know I'm a huge proponent of the dance medicine. So thank you so much for joining me. This has been so lovely having you and seeing you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you.
It's been too long.
We miss you.
I know. I miss you guys too. So I'll see you soon.
Soon. We get to hug soon.
Yes. We will definitely get to hug soon.